Welcome to part 4 of the tools of motivation. These are process premises that target us psychologically, premises that go through and get us to persuade or persuade us towards both negative and positive types of appeals that are out there. So far, we've talked about needs, emotions, and attitudes, and this clip will go through and deal with the process premise of consistency, or what I call certainty. And, this isn't rocket science necessarily at this point. The notion that we are all uncertainty avoiders factors heavily into our ability to be persuaded to maintain some level of status quo, some level of consistency. You've been there. You've thrown your key into the ignition and you've turned it and nothing happens, right? The engine doesn't turn over, especially lately with the cold weather we've been having. You've got a battery that's 3 or 4 years old in your car. It's given up the ghost, right? And we don't like that. Suddenly the whole day is ruined because we can't get to where we need to be. We can't get to class. We can't get to work. We can't pick up the babysitter, whatever the case might be, okay? And we don't like that. And that's what I mean by the fact that we are uncertainty avoiders. You know this, if the power has ever gone out and you've walked into a room and you flip the switch and to have nothing happened, yeah, we don't like that. We don't like that at all. I've had my own experience with certainty. Back in 2003, I suffered not one but 3 heart attacks, myocardial infarctions. The second one, I happened to be in a cardiac care unit when it happened, which is exactly where you want to be when your heart fails, right? And during that time, while my heart was failing, I remember hearing the alarms come up on the telemetry and hearing the cessation of my own heartbeat before I lost consciousness. And, it's cliche, a bit hackneyed for me to go through and say, that changed the rest of my life, right? But it did. And I realized that very little is certain out there. And anybody who tries to sell me something based on certainty, anybody who tries to persuade me based on the idea that how things are how they will always be, comes under scrutiny. What once was will never be. I'm not sure who said that, but it's pretty profound in the concept that we certainly like to preserve the way things are, especially if things are going pretty good. If we've been raised in abusive contexts, if we have been involved in abusive marriage, we have a tendency to seek out that type of abusive person again because we can at least predict their behavior. While we can go through and endure maybe the abuse, it factors in on we're more comfortable with being able to predict somebody's abusive behavior than we are with somebody who is not, which I think is fascinating as we study this, as we study human behavior and persuasion there. And that's pretty well it when it comes to this idea of constancy or certainty or uncertainty. Anybody who tries to go through and persuade us that things are always going to be the way they are needs to be held up to a greater scrutiny. And we'll talk more about that as we look at certain persuasive influences through social media, as we look at how people are radicalized through the course of the semester, applying these 4 process premises. Now, this serves as a foundation, as a background for you as we go through and look at other persuasive theory that's out there. So remember how needs factors into how we're persuaded, how emotions go through and make us more vulnerable to persuasion, how our own default attitudes make us better targets for persuasive, especially for negative persuasive types of messages, and that a break in our own consistency lends itself to a vulnerability that we want to feel. And so we might surround ourselves with things that might make life a little bit more certain. So I'm going to open up a discussion about these as these premises. I have my own that tend to be certain types of persuasive weaknesses. I'm curious what yours might be. So make sure you watch out for that discussion post coming up this week. All right? If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Thanks for watching.